Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka The Movie Wist. If you enjoy this interview and want to hear more top-notch film industry conversations, please press the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay in the know. Hello, Marcelline Block and Jennifer Kirby. Why did you want to write a book about Michel Gondry?
I think we were initially attracted to Gondry because we felt that his works were very distinctive, even bordering on being idiosyncratic in terms of his visual style and themes. But they're also really, really diverse. So we thought we could generate a lot of diverse perspectives on him. So they're diverse in terms of the language he's made films in, both in English and French, diverse in terms of genre, from small personal films through to things that are more well-known, like 2004's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I think is what the film most people would remember him or know him from, and diverse in terms of media, including narrative films, documentaries, music videos, and producing the TV show Kidding, which he's also director of 8 episodes of.
Although Gondry is an acclaimed auteur and an Oscar-winning screenwriter for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and he has received critical praise for his use of handcrafted effects in his multifaceted filmography, as well as has elicited extensive scholarly interest in his individual cinematic works, an edited book collection devoted entirely to Gondry has not yet been published, and therefore our volume, ReFocus, the films of Michel Gondry, seeks to fill this crucial gap in film and media studies. And our book features a range of original critical studies, as well as an in-depth overview of his career and works by drawing connections between his films, his televisual works, and his music videos by approaching his oeuvre from multiple interdisciplinary perspectives. And the reader of our book will be able to contextualize Gondry's distinctive style in relation to French, American, and transnational cinematic traditions and themes, as well as trace key aesthetic tendencies and preoccupations through studies of his work across multiple media, film, music video, television, and genre, narrative fiction, documentary, music video.
How would you describe his visual style?
I think he absolutely has a definitive and distinctive visual style that you can actually see across all of these different works. So that's something that's quite interesting to us about him, that he's very eclectic, but also has a visual style that you can see popping up across the music videos, across the TV show, and across the films. So one of the things he does quite often is he frequently uses objects and sets that look in some way like they're analog or handmade. So, for example, puppets play a really big part in both The Science of Sleep, which is a French language film from 2006, and the 2-season television show Kidding, which ran from 2018 to this year. So in both of these works, we see kind of handcrafted worlds, and they're often used to externalize or process the inner emotions and project these emotions of the main characters. So it's kind of like a childlike universe of fantasy and play. And we often see settings that seem to look as if they're constructed from paper mache or found objects. So it's quite a distinctive aesthetic. And then even in the kind of more commercial American films, such as 2008's Be Kind, Rewind with Jack Black, Gondry sort of uses this aesthetic under the premise that it's about 2 video store employees who have accidentally wiped all the tapes as a base, and uses this as a basis to construct a series of sequences where famous films like Ghostbusters are recreated using everyday objects and basic art supplies. So he's very interested in this idea of craft, of things that look handmade, and also of kind of blending fantasy and memory and elements of surrealism with a more kind of material world.
Yeah, Michel Gondry shot lots of music videos, as we've been saying. And I was wondering, can you please remind my audience, or at least tell some of my audience, what MTV and Much Music, what that was like, or just music videos in general, sort of pre-YouTube, that Michel Gondry shot music videos for, and who were some of the musicians that he shot videos for?
Well, Gondry is the creative force behind some of the most renowned music videos in the history of the medium, and he has directed music videos for artists and groups including, among others, Bjork, The White Stripes, The Chemical Brothers, Foo Fighters, Daft Punk, Nina Cherry, Sheryl Crow, Chibo Matto, Lenny Kravitz, Massive Attack, The Rolling Stones, Black Crowes, Beck, Paul McCartney, Kanye West, Radiohead, Wyclef Jean, Sinead O'Connor, and Kylie Minogue. And he really first rose to prominence as a director of consistently innovative music videos in the late 1980s, which were actually starting for his own rock band, Wee Wee, for which he played the drums, as well as advertisements before directing his first feature film, Human Nature, in 2001. And as we mentioned about his films, his works also, his music video works also frequently combine materials and media in unusual or unpredictable ways, including blending analog and digital technologies, and emphasize collisions between different mental states as well as aesthetic innovation. And Gondry's 2002 music video for the White Stripes song Fell in Love with a Girl uses figures that appear to be made out of Legos, but which are in fact animated. And Gondry returns to music videos and still continues to film them. So he's still filming music videos, and that's something that Matt Mielis wrote about in Consequence of Sound, that Gondry always returns to his music video roots between projects, never even hinting that his first medium, one that often gets treated as mere commercial work, is in any way a lesser art form. And it's that attitude, perhaps, that has driven Gondry to continue practicing music videos as high concept art. Over the years, he's continued to tweak and perfect a number of inventive styles that have allowed him to turn his videos into unlikely vehicles for surprisingly complex storytelling. It's a calling card that not only allowed him to frequently work with acts as beloved and revered as the White Stripes, Bjork, and the Chemical Brothers, but one that's often resulted in creating visuals that have become permanently associated with these artists. And there I'm citing Matt Mielis from Consequence of Sound, where he talks about 10 times that Michel Gondry made your favorite artists cooler. And Gondry is, we have a chapter in our volume dedicated, in fact, to Gondry's music videos by a scholar named Daniel Klug. And Klug writes that Gondry is one of the most influential music video directors in the history of the medium, and through his pioneering work on the music video, Gondry has helped establish the reputation of this genre beyond popular culture. And I wish to state that the impact and influence of Gondry's videos on film is undeniable, as notes Grau, who states that Gondry's innovative music videos have used groundbreaking techniques that have become pervasive in the film industry, such as the morphing of images and the bullet time effect later made famous by The Matrix. So you can really see the impact of Gondry's videos on major films. For instance, really, Gondry is one of the best music video directors, and he is just renowned for his videos for the White Stripes, Bjork, Shibomato, the Chemical Brothers, the Foo Fighters, Beck. And Derek Hill writes that they display the same sense of melancholy and hyper-realist fantasy that would later be visually explicated in his feature films. And in our volume, we have a chapter entitled, "It Would Not Be Just Visual, It Could Have Words and a Story, Performance and Narrative in the Music Video Oeuvre of Michel Gondry." Daniel Klug emphasizes how Gondry crosses boundaries even within the subforms of the music video, and how Gondry's performance-based videos incorporate heterogeneous narrative elements and examples of audiovisual surplus, such as morphing and multiplication. And Klug explores how performance videos directed by Gondry, such as No One Knows for Queens of the Stone Age, as well as complex narratives in Everlong, Foo Fighters, combine typical forms and functions of music videos with specific ways of translating musical into visual elements. And the chapter discusses the characteristics of the audio vision of music videos in particular, and in particular, Gondry's significant concepts of visualizing music of different genres throughout his career. And Klug finds that Gondry utilizes different types of performance in his music videos, and mentions several of Gondry's most well-known videos, including for Daft Punk's All Around the World, for Kylie Minogue and the White Stripes, and Foo Fighters' Everlong.
All right. Wow. Well, after all that, you definitely have to have a favorite music video. So can both of you tell me a favorite music video by him?
My favorite music video, and this might be a little bit biased, directed by Gondry, is for a song called Walkie Talkie Man by a band called Stereogram. So this is partly because the song is actually by a Kiwi band, and I hail from New Zealand, and partly because the video, it's very creative. So it depicts a town and a character made from wool. So again, it's kind of combining those aesthetics and materials, as it uses kind of digital effects and stop motion, but it appears that everything is being knitted by a character actually knitting the world in the video. So it's, as Marcelline mentioned, his videos often combine band performance video and more kind of high concept aesthetics, as our contributor Daniel Klug writes about. So in Walkie Talkie Man, wool's emanating from the guitars as the band play as well, and then from a film projector projecting a mini knitted version of the video itself. So it's got all these kind of levels in it. So it's quite similar to the aesthetic of his very famous video for the White Stripes song Fell in Love with a Girl, which looks like it's made from Lego. But this is with wool kind of frantically moving, unraveling and reconstituting in weird and wonderful ways throughout the video.
And my favorite would be, although Gondry has directed many significant music videos and made major contributions to the development of this genre, if I absolutely have to choose one, my favorite would be for the Marseille group IAM, Je danse le Mia, I Dance the Mia from 1994. And I've previously written extensively about the film, music, and literary culture of Marseille, including in my books, World Film Locations Marseille, the French version being Filmer Marseille, and the importance of Marseille hip-hop and rap groups in articles that I've written and published. And IAM songs use regionally specific Provençal and or Marseille French expressions and often eulogize the city's topography and atmosphere. And Je danse le Mia is really their signature song, and it uses, for instance, it opens with the lyrics Tu es fada, je craigne dégain, and it's using regionalisms, fada for crazy and dégain for no one. And it's also just the concept of the Mia is discussed by in Total Chaos, which is one of the Marseille trilogy by Izzo. And I just think that Gondry's video, which is set in and around a nightclub, really uses zoom shots very innovatively, and it truly captures the atmosphere and the kind of description that Izzo discusses. Izzo states that the expression Mia came from Italy. Lancia had launched a car called the Mia with an opening in the window, which allowed you to put your elbow outside without lowering your window. This was too much for the wits of Marseille. The bars were full of Mias. Vulgar, narrow-minded posers and wheeler dealers, they spent their days propping up to the bar, drinking Ricard. They sometimes did a bit of work if they had to, and this is from Izzo's book, Total Chaos. And in many ways, Gondry's video, which is set in and around a nightclub and uses zoom shots very innovatively, really captures the description of Izzo and the importance of the flourishing of the Marseillais rap music scene really since the late 80s. And I think it's just the video really captures that. Gondry's video really captures that, between the intimate link that is forged between the language, culture, and community of Marseille as expressed by its popular music, rap, and hip-hop artists. And I think the video really captures that very, very well.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to check out these videos. They sound pretty cool. So I'm a big music video fan. I watch them all the time. But like you guys say, they sometimes get that bad rep as that high art. And I can't think of too many music video directors who transition into feature filmmaking. And maybe that's not right. Why do you think that is?
There are quite a few who've come from music videos or who kind of cut their teeth on them. So some might not immediately come to mind, but David Fincher directed music videos for artists including Madonna, Iggy Pop, and Billy Idol. Also Mick G directed a huge number of videos, bands like Sugar Ray, Korn, and The Offspring. So actually some quite sort of confronting in-your-face videos, which I suppose makes sense. And I mean, quite recently too, director of the 2019 film Queen and Slim, Melina Matsoukas, this is a film I really love, directed the 2016 Beyonce video for Formation, and uses music really interestingly in Queen and Slim as well. So in general, I think that music video directors tend to have quite a strong aesthetic, and it's usually characterized by kind of associative visuals to match the music, privileging audio-visual sensation rather than perhaps following strict narrative rules. Most of the directors who have moved from music videos into cinema tend to be the ones you can think of as being kind of fairly strong stylists. So perhaps this is why, they're not as likely to make the most conventional of movies. But as Marcelline mentioned earlier, even beyond individual directors moving into from music videos into film, we can see a lot of techniques from music videos, like the morphing and multiplication, becoming quite widely used in film as well. So I think that influence or that aesthetic often translates even within and beyond the work of individuals.
Okay, Dave Chappelle. Let's talk Dave Chappelle. Give me some appreciation of the documentary that Michelle made called Dave Chappelle's Block Party.
Yes, we in fact have a chapter in our volume which is devoted to the film. So we have a chapter in our volume by Professor Monique Taylor, which is called The Real and Surreal of Race in America, Michel Gondry and the African American Identity Crisis of Dave Chappelle. So we do devote extensive aspects of our book to the film, to the documentary. And it is a well-known cliche that an outsider is often better positioned to draw insightful observations about a place than those who inhabit that place and thus do not necessarily notice its features and structural organization, which they regard as not as natural and not necessarily noteworthy. And Gondry's films, and this is something we really explore throughout our volume, the transnational aspect of Gondry as an auteur, that he is a French auteur frequently filming in the United States, English language films, and how he crosses boundaries of nation, of language, of genre. And so we do devote the chapter in our volume to Dave Chappelle's Block Party. So Gondry's films about or set in the United States use similar techniques and explore a number of common themes, memory, love, and identity that overlap with those set in France, but additionally provide a layer of commentary on American society and popular culture. And there are a trio of films set in America, including Dave Chappelle's Block Party, Be Kind, Rewind, which we previously mentioned, and The We and the I. Gondry significantly explores the intersections between popular culture, community, and memory. And in chapter 9 of our volume, which addresses Dave Chappelle's Block Party, Monique Taylor writes that in many of Michel Gondry's transnational and transatlantic cinematic collaborations, including with screenwriter Charlie Kaufman and public intellectual and scholar Noam Chomsky, and most importantly for this discussion about Dave Chappelle's Block Party, actor and comedian Dave Chappelle, Gondry plays the role of the outsider looking in as both a participant in as well as an observer of aspects of American cultural conversations on memory, identity, and language. And Dave Chappelle's Block Party is a concert documentary which depicts the organization and performances of a block party hosted by Dave Chappelle in Brooklyn, New York. And Chappelle's Brooklyn Block Party concert, which is the subject of Gondry's Dave Chappelle's Block Party documentary, was a concert that featured performances by some of the biggest names in hip-hop, rap, R&B, including Questlove, Erykah Badu, Mos Def, the Fugees reunited with Lauryn Hill and Kanye West, among others, and drawing upon Mark Anthony Neal's concept of the post-soul aesthetic, which is a meditation on contemporary issues such as deindustrialization, desegregation, the corporate annexation of Black popular expression, and the general commodification of Black life and Black culture. Taylor's chapter, which is entitled The Real and Surreal of Race in America, Michel Gondry and the African American Identity Crisis of Dave Chappelle, reads the documentary as a post-soul construction, bringing together Chappelle's post-soul sensibility and Gondry's surreal aesthetic in order to channel Chappelle's highly public, personal, and professional quest to, quote, keep it real. And Taylor finds that as a film, Gondry's Block Party, rather than simply filming the concert, I know if you've seen concert documentaries, sometimes just kind of film the concert, really bridges the gap between the real and surreal via a singular visual style and vocabulary. And Taylor's chapter draws attention to Gondry's Block Party's construction of a hybrid and hyper-real community through the use of strategies such as movements back and forth in time between the entertainers' performances and the preparations leading up to the concert, which highlight the production of the event, surreal visual embellishments, and prominent allusions to symbols of African American identity. And Taylor's discussion of Gondry's Dave Chappelle's Block Party is of particular resonance and relevance to our current historical moment, in light of Chappelle's block party in Dayton, Ohio on August 25th, 2019, which was a benefit concert that Chappelle organized in the wake of the mass shooting that occurred in Dayton on August 4th, 2019, and claimed the lives of 9 people, tragically, as well as Chappelle's return to stand-up comedy with his controversial Netflix special entitled Sticks and Stones, which was released on August 26, 2019. And furthermore, on October 27th, 2019, Chappelle was the recipient of the prestigious Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, and this award is considered the highest accolade in comedy and recognizes individuals who have had an impact on American society in the vein of 19th century novelist and essayist Samuel Clemens, better known by his pseudonym Mark Twain, and Chappelle had previously won an Emmy in 2017 for Best Guest Actor in a Comedy Series.
Okay, yeah, I'm a big fan. I love Dave Chappelle's block party.
What do you like the most about it?
I just think it's so much fun,
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm a big rap fan, and I love that they do the block party, because that's kind of how, before there were like, big venues, big concerts in stadiums or Coachella, it was an organic grassroots thing that was just happening in the streets of New York City. Like a DJ would spin records from his kitchen, and people would dance outside. And then at Dave Chappelle's block party, they assemble, these top tier rap artists to do the same thing, but like 20 years later, for people who are interested in that culture, it's really, it's maybe a little underrated.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting how Gondry and Chappelle kind of include a lot of sort of history of the neighborhood as well. So they go on this sort of tour of the neighborhood, so that idea of communities and spaces changing is really tied to using the block party.
Most definitely. Do you guys agree or disagree that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is Michel Gondry's greatest film?
This is a film that Gondry is really the best known for, and for which he received the most recognition, acclaim, the Oscar for Best Screenplay, and it's really most closely associated with Gondry, and it's undoubtedly his best known film, and engages with themes and preoccupations that recur throughout his oeuvre, such as the concern with preserving as well as paradoxically reinventing memory, which similarly features strongly in his other English language films. And the film's complex chronology and ontology has generated a body of scholarship on its ethical dilemmas, visual techniques, and cinematic approximation of memory. And writing in 2008, Hill stated that through displaying both Gondry's technical wizardry and his ability to keep the performance or emotional weight of the film from being bullied into subservience, Eternal Sunshine is considered a, quote, real masterpiece of the American New Wave. Of course, he won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, which he co-wrote with Charlie Kaufman. And just on a personal note, most of the time when I mentioned to friends or acquaintances that I was writing a book about Gondry, people were often unfamiliar with his name. So they would say, "Oh, what are you writing about?" And I would say, "Oh, Michel Gondry." And they would say, "Oh, I'm not familiar with him." But then I would say, "Oh, well, do you know Eternal Sunshine?" And they would know the title of the film immediately. So, I mean, that kind of is the recognition, the name recognition of that title of that film. Everybody knows it. The film's place is cemented in the annals of pop culture, and it really is just that name recognition factor. It's really Gondry's most memorable film. And even though it was released over 15 years ago, it still has incredible power and resonance. It has made its mark upon pop culture. Its impact and influence are just undeniable, and its many accolades, the Oscar for Best Screenplay. It was actually named the #1 Best American Screenplay of the 21st Century by IndieWire in an article. And as we note in our introduction to our volume, according to Derek Hill, it's really considered the epitome of the American New Wave, as it is a complex yet commercial film that demands a commitment from the audience, but also wants to satisfy, spark an emotional response, and entertain without pandering. The significance of this film to Gondry's work, really to his oeuvre, can't be understated. And Christopher Grouse states that Eternal Sunshine is a film that is not just worth seeing, but worth dwelling on, puzzling over, and living with through repeated examination due to its complexity, nuance, and depth, and richness, both philosophic and aesthetic. And as such, we actually devote an entire section of our volume on Gondry to this very film. Our volume is divided into different sections, and there's really one devoted just to this film, and the chapters in this section really offer new perspectives on the film's narrative invention,
narrative inventiveness. And indeed, in a 2019 Vanity Fair article entitled "Why Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind Still Resonates," Kay Austen Collins states that 15 years on, this classic romance still speaks to the pain and pleasure of lost love. Just this very universal concept of the pain of lost love, and why this kind of gives the film such lasting resonance and power.
No, absolutely. And I just want to say to Aslan's kind of personal note there too, when I've mentioned this project to people, especially kind of people outside of film and media studies, many of my colleagues and friends have mentioned that they know this film because, I don't know if this is just a New Zealand thing, but they watched it in either media studies or English classes at high school. So that's quite interesting to me that it was sort of taught as, or has become almost canonical within this kind of modern American New Wave filmmaking.
Yeah, so it's definitely a movie that people have remembered. One movie that I think people have forgotten, though, is The Green Hornet, which I think is a fun movie. But tell me about the observations in your book about that project.
So I'm like sort of the primary apologist for The Green Hornet here. I think it's a very fun movie. But what really kind of interested me about The Green Hornet, and I wrote a chapter about it for the collection, is that it's a superhero film and it functions as a superhero film, but it also deconstructs both the genre conventions of superheroes and its kind of high-tech aesthetic in Gondry's very typical handmade way. So it's about a largely inept protagonist, Britt Reed, who's a rich playboy portrayed in the film by Seth Rogen. He decides to become a superhero based on his knowledge of superheroes from other films and media after the death of his father. So he becomes a superhero, and he's also taking over his father's role as the publisher of a newspaper. But the film playfully spoofs the conventions of the superhero film to kind of emphasize how incompetent and infantile he is. So, for example, while his sidekick, Kato, played by Jay Chow, designs his weapons, Britt's instead just sitting there kind of aimlessly doodling and colouring in a magazine image. And so this functions as a knowing illusion to and subversion of the scenes we might be familiar with in other films like Spider-Man, where the superhero designs their new identity, that here he's just sort of doodling and colouring in a magazine. And there's another great sequence where he and Kato have this massive fight in which they destroy parts of Britt's mansion. And this sort of parodies the overblown fight sequences and spectacle of destruction in the genre. And then because it's Gondry as well, instead of using a kind of really polished digital look, even though there are digital special effects in the film, the story world sort of looks as though it's been pasted together or produced using children's toys. So he uses a lot of analog-like effects. So, for example, when Kato fights, the film uses a technique to represent what's called Kato vision, which includes kind of slow motion shots showing Kato's comprehension of the situation and this red radar accompanied by this kind of very rudimentary warning sound as it zooms in on important elements of the shot to emphasize Kato's thought process. But this kind of red radar basically looks like the lights and sensors of mechanical toys. It's not the sophisticated computer imaging system that someone like Iron Man might use. And there's a sequence that's probably the most written about and discussed sequence in the film, where Britt, the main protagonist, mentally reconstructs the events leading up to his father's death. And how Gondry chooses to show this is that as he slowly pieces together how his father and the film's villains were connected, we see a series of events linked by cause and effect, with each new element that Britt understands appearing as if onto a paper collage. So it sort of comes in and it's sort of stuck on as if it's being constructed from paper. So it's very much about this idea of sort of a childlike man playing at being a superhero. And at the same time, Gondry's really playing with the genre and with assumptions about the kind of polished, sleek look of superhero films. But the film didn't get as many glowing reviews as some of Gondry's other films. But I think that it has a lot more in common with his other works than many people realize. So I'm quite a big enthusiast of this film and defender of it.
Fair enough. Would you say that's his unjustifiably underappreciated movie?
So I would, in the sense that I think it's probably the most unjustifiably unappreciated. But I'm also a really big fan of a film that I think is not necessarily underappreciated, but is just not as well known, that he made in America in 2012, called The We in the Eye. So this is probably my favorite film by Michel Gondry. And I just don't think it's been seen by enough people. So it's a really quite small scale film set mostly inside a school bus with a group of teenagers, mostly played by non-actors, and it uses a lot of improvisation. And they're traveling home on the last day of school. But how it kind of works is that they gossip about one another and they tell these stories about events that have happened, which Gondry often presents as sort of videos that resemble those found on social media. And also they sort of spread messages around the bus via text. So it's filled with these secondhand and unreliable stories. So even though it's made on a low budget and on a small scale compared to some of Gondry's other projects like Eternal Sunshine or Science Asleep, it sort of blends truth, memory, and fantasy in just as interesting ways as those other films do. And it also creates these really compelling character portraits as we learn more about the kids and their relationship to one another, especially as they sort of finally reveal their true selves in the later scenes where they're in one-on-one exchanges. So I find this a really charming film. It's endlessly rewatchable. The performances are fantastic. And it still has that idea of kind of how memory intersects with ideas about fantasy and kind of identity in it. So yeah, it's one that I think many people might not have seen. And probably of the three films sort of in the sort of American period of films about, to a certain degree, about kind of memory and American identity, I think it's definitely less well known than Be Kind, Rewind or Dave Chappelle's Block Party, but absolutely just as valuable to watch.
Before I let you go, may you please tell us what you have planned for the rest of the year?
Currently quite busy. I'm teaching a couple of courses, one in digital media and one on screen adaptations of novels. But I'm hoping to look forward to get back to some new research towards the end of the year. So I'm trying to develop some work actually from my PhD thesis, which I completed at the end of 2017. So it's about the way that cinema represents and imagines digital and material augmented spaces. So looking at films that kind of reference and represent worlds especially created by mobile media. So there might be a touch more Gondry included in that.
And I'm also teaching as well and doing some research, a few projects in the pipeline, as well as some translations from English to French and French to English as well. And if I could make just a final statement about our volume, we just wanted to say that the final edited collection has contributions from 11 scholars in addition to ourselves, based in the USA, Europe, the Middle East, and Australasia. And they bring different perspectives and frameworks to elements of his work, whether that is literary and narrative theory, analysis of his aesthetics, such as analyzing the use of arts and crafts in his films, such as The Science of Sleep and Mood Indigo, examining his contribution to the narrative and performative features of the music video, and meditations on his depictions of personal, collective, and community memory, such as in Be Kind, Rewind. And the overall argument of our collection is that Gondry is emblematic of transnational auteur filmmaking, with French funding involved even in some of his English language and arguably most accessible works, such as his 2008 nostalgic comedy Be Kind, Rewind, crossing aesthetic and cultural borders between national film industries, as well as between art and popular cinema and between media.
Okay, well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that book. It comes out in September, am I correct?
September, yes, from Edinburgh University Press.
Very excited for it to come out because we're really proud of all of our contributors, and we think some really great work and really interesting, diverse perspectives on Gondry in there.
Okay, well, I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much for your time, having this conversation with us.
Really enjoyed speaking with you.